They thought I was stupid because I smiled. Because I served dinner on time. Because I asked softly instead of demanding. Because I trusted my husband enough to never check his phone. What they didn't understand, what he never understood, is that silence is not ignorance. It is observation. For 3 years, my husband loved another woman. For 3 years, he went to work, kissed me goodbye, and built a second life with his secretary, right under my roof, funded by my patience, protected by my faith. And for 3 years, I watched. Not because I knew everything. But because I knew enough. By the time they realized I wasn't a fool, it was already too late. I used to believe marriage was built on trust. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies, the loud declarations, the jealous fights, but the quiet trust. The kind that lives in routines. Morning tea. Shared bills. The way his jacket always hung on the same hook by the door. That was my life. My husband, Arun, had a habit of touching my shoulder as he passed me in the hallway. It wasn't romantic. It was automatic. Like muscle memory. I used to think that meant safety. I was wrong. The first crack was small. Insignificant. Almost laughable. He stopped touching my shoulder. At first, I blamed work stress. Promotions come with exhaustion, I told myself. Men withdraw when they're tired. That's what women are taught, to explain men to themselves until nothing hurts anymore. Then came the phone. He never used to lock it. Suddenly, it had a password. Suddenly, it lived face down. Suddenly, if I entered the room while he was texting, he'd pause, just half a second too long. People think affairs announce themselves with lipstick stains and hotel receipts. They don't. They announce themselves with absence. Absence of curiosity. Absence of irritation. Absence of presence. He stopped fighting with me. Stopped disagreeing. Stopped caring enough to even pretend. And I, fool that I was supposed to be, kept playing my role. I cooked. I listened. I smiled at his stories about long meetings and new projects. And all the while, another woman was learning the sound of his laugh in a way I no longer heard. Her name was Ria. I learned that later. Back then, she was just a feeling. A shadow sitting between us at the dinner table. The day I finally saw her, it wasn't dramatic. No hotel rooms. No hand-holding. Just her voice on speakerphone. "Sir, did you check the presentation I sent last night?" Her tone was intimate in a way professionalism never is. Soft. Familiar. Possessive. My husband glanced at me before answering. That glance was everything. In it was calculation. Confidence. Contempt. He believed I wouldn't question him. And that was his greatest mistake. Because when a woman realizes she's being underestimated, something inside her hardens into clarity. That night, as he slept beside me, peaceful, unbothered, convinced of his cleverness, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision. I would not confront him. I would not cry. I would not beg. I would learn. And when I finally spoke, it would be with evidence so heavy it would crush the life he built on my silence. There is a strange power in knowing the truth while pretending you don't. Every morning after that night, I woke up beside my husband with a calm I had never felt before. My heart still hurt, yes, but beneath the pain was something sharper. Control. I watched him carefully now. Not like a wife searching for love, but like a witness collecting facts. He brushed his teeth exactly 7 strokes on each side. He checked his phone before he checked the time. He never looked me in the eyes when he said her name. Ria finished the report. Ria scheduled the meeting. Ria reminded me. Her name lived too comfortably on his tongue. I learned quickly that affairs thrive on routine. Once you know the pattern, the lies become lazy. He started leaving for work earlier on Thursdays. He came home later on Fridays. And once every month, there was a conference, always out of town, always urgent, always necessary. I smiled through it all. I even helped him pack. That's the part people don't understand when they call women weak. They think strength looks like confrontation. Like broken plates and raised voices. But real strength sometimes looks like folding your enemy's clothes neatly, while memorizing the receipt still in his pocket. The first thing I did was reclaim myself. I updated my passwords. Opened a separate bank account. Found my old degree certificates buried in a drawer labeled Married Life. Then I started listening. When you stop reacting, people start revealing themselves. One evening, he took a call in the kitchen, thinking the sound of running water would protect him. He underestimated how quiet a woman can become when she's done trusting. "I can't talk now," he whispered. Pause. A smile. "Yes. Tomorrow." That smile didn't belong to me anymore. I memorized it anyway. I never checked his phone. That would have been obvious. Desperate. Amateur. Instead, I checked his habits. I noticed how he suddenly cared about his appearance. New shirts. New cologne. A confidence that didn't come from success, but from validation. Someone else was applauding him. Someone younger. Someone impressed. Someone who didn't know the version of him who forgot anniversaries and avoided responsibility. Or maybe she did, and liked him anyway. That thought didn't make me angry. It made me focused. The first solid proof came by accident. A dry cleaner receipt fell out of his jacket. 2 shirts. Women's perfume. A hotel name I didn't recognize. I didn't confront him. I Googled. That hotel didn't host conferences. It hosted couples. From that moment on, I stopped seeing myself as a wife waiting for answers. I became a woman building a case. I documented everything. Dates. Times. Changes in behavior. Screenshots of calendar overlaps. Financial irregularities that told a story louder than any confession. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't temptation. This was a relationship that had been growing for 3 years. 3 years of shared lunches. 3 years of inside jokes. 3 years of stolen moments funded by my loyalty. 3 years where he came home to me not because he loved me, but because I made his life easier. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. I didn't see a victim. I saw a woman standing at the edge of a war, quiet, composed, and finally awake. And I smiled. Because now I knew something he didn't. I wasn't afraid of losing him. I was planning how to make sure he lost everything else. Affairs always rewrite their own origin stories. It just happened. We didn't plan it. We were lonely. Those lies are for people who want forgiveness. I wasn't looking for forgiveness. I was looking for the beginning. The real one. It came to me on a Wednesday afternoon, disguised as nostalgia. My husband was in the shower when his laptop chimed, soft, polite, confident. The sound of someone who didn't expect to be caught. I didn't rush. Rushing makes mistakes. I walked past the bedroom like I hadn't heard anything, poured myself water, let my pulse slow. Then I returned, calm as routine, and opened the screen. He hadn't logged out of his email. 3 years of marriage, and that was his mistake. I searched her name. Not recent messages. Not flirtation. I went straight to the earliest date. And there it was. A welcome email. "It was such a pleasure meeting you today, sir. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I look forward to learning from you." Polite. Respectful. Innocent. Except for one detail. He replied at 11:47 p.m. Not about work. Not about training. About her smile. That's how it began. Not with desperation. With entitlement. He liked the way she laughed at his jokes. She liked the way power sounded when it spoke directly to her. I read every email. Every message. Every slow escalation from professionalism to familiarity to intimacy. She knew he was married. She asked about me. Your wife must be very understanding. He answered without hesitation. She doesn't really question me. That sentence didn't break me. It clarified me. This wasn't betrayal born from confusion. This was betrayal built on contempt. For me. For my intelligence. For the life I maintained so he could feel important somewhere else. By the time the water stopped running in the bathroom, I had already emailed myself everything. Then I closed the laptop. Placed it exactly where it had been. And went to make dinner. That night, I served his favorite dish. He ate happily. Complimented me. Told me he was lucky to have such a simple, understanding wife. I smiled. Inside, I was rewriting the future. The next phase wasn't about exposure. Exposure is loud. Temporary. Messy. I wanted consequences that lasted. So I began planting seeds. At work, I mentioned casually that he seemed stressed lately. Overworked. Forgetful. I asked, sweetly, if everything was okay. Concern is disarming. I reached out to an old family friend who worked in finance. Asked questions. Learned what I needed to learn. I stopped covering for him socially. Stopped filling in his gaps. Stopped smoothing his mistakes. And slowly, so slowly he didn't notice, the image he'd built began to crack. Men like him think women leave when they're angry. They never see the ones who leave when they're done. And I wasn't leaving yet. Not until the ground beneath him understood what it meant to disappear. The most dangerous moment in any affair is not the beginning. It's the moment they stop being afraid. That's when they get sloppy. My husband grew lighter. Happier. Less cautious. He stopped checking over his shoulder. Stopped pretending work exhausted him. He started humming in the mornings. Love, or the illusion of it, has a way of making people arrogant. And arrogance always leaves fingerprints. Ria began to change too. She wasn't just a secretary anymore. She was a presence. A certainty. A woman who believed she had earned her place. She started calling after office hours. Not whispering. Not apologizing. Speaking freely, confidently, like someone who assumed she would always be answered. Once, she accidentally sent a message meant for him, to me. Just a sentence. Don't forget tonight. Same place. No name. No explanation. A test. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back with steady fingers. Wrong number. And waited. 10 seconds later, my husband's phone rang. He rushed to another room to answer it. That was the night I knew she didn't just want him. She wanted my place. And she believed I was already gone. I let him think that. I became softer. Quieter. Less interested. I stopped asking where he was going. Stopped reminding him of plans. Stopped waiting up. Men mistake emotional withdrawal for defeat. They never realize it's preparation. The public mistake came sooner than I expected. A company event. Formal. Celebratory. Spouses invited. He hesitated before asking me to come. That hesitation was my invitation. I wore black. Not dramatic. Not flashy. Controlled. Calm. Unforgettable. At the event, Ria stood beside him like she belonged there. She laughed too loudly at his jokes. Touched his arm when she spoke. Looked at me with something close to pity. She thought she had one. So I introduced myself. Warmly. Politely. Hi. I'm his wife. The air shifted. Her smile froze just long enough. Just long enough for everyone to notice. I shook her hand. Complimented her work. Thanked her for supporting my husband so well. People remember moments like that. Because truth doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it just stands there, calm, undeniable. On the drive home, my husband was quiet. Too quiet. That night, he tried to touch me like he used to. Like reassurance. Like habit. I moved his hand away. Not angrily. Decisively. That was the first time he looked at me with uncertainty. Not guilt. Fear. Because something had changed, and for the first time, he didn't know what it was. I slept peacefully that night. Because the trap was no longer invisible. It was closing. I learned something important during those weeks. You don't have to destroy a man. You just have to stop protecting him. I stopped fixing his excuses. Stopped smoothing his schedules. Stopped reminding him of birthdays, deadlines, social expectations. I let him be exactly who he was, unchecked. And the world noticed. At work, people began to whisper. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Why was his secretary always in meetings she didn't need to be in? Why did she speak for him when he was present? Why did she look offended when he spoke to other women? None of these questions accused him. That's why they were dangerous. Rumors thrive best on uncertainty. I never denied anything. Never confirmed anything. When asked how he was doing, I smiled and said, busy. Very busy. That word, busy, carried weight when paired with his absences. Then the financial cracks began to show. Money had always flowed through me. I paid bills. Balanced accounts. Made sure things stayed smooth. I stopped. Not dramatically. Just, responsibly. When a payment bounced, I informed him calmly. When an account overdraft, I asked if he wanted me to handle it later. Men panic when the systems they take for granted stop working. He grew irritable. Defensive. Short-tempered at work. And Ria, confident, territorial Ria, didn't help. She began behaving like someone already chosen. Correcting him in meetings. Finishing his sentences. Scheduling over his authority. Power shared in secret never survives daylight. The first formal complaint came from a junior employee. Nothing explicit. Just unprofessional dynamics. The second came from HR. That's when he came home early. He stood in the living room like a stranger, eyes restless, voice tight. Is something going around about me? I looked at him from the sofa, calm, composed, unreachable. I don't know, I said. Is there? That was the moment he understood. Not everything. Just enough. He reached for anger. Then guilt. Then charm. None of it worked. Because I wasn't his wife anymore. I was the witness to his choices. That night, he slept on the edge of the bed. Ria stopped calling. Not because she cared. Because she was scared. And fear makes people do reckless things. Fear changes people. It strips away patience. It kills strategy. It makes them reach for certainty, even when certainty is impossible. Ria reached out to me 3 days after HR called my husband in for a formal discussion. Not through him. Through me. That alone told me everything. Her message was careful. Polite. Almost respectful. Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding at the office. I would really appreciate the chance to clear things up with you. I read it twice. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was desperate. I didn't reply immediately. I let the silence stretch. Let her imagine conversations that weren't happening. Let her panic fill in the gaps. Finally, I answered. Of course. Come by tomorrow evening. My husband didn't know. That was intentional. When she arrived, she looked nothing like the confident woman from the office event. Her makeup was careful. Her clothes modest. Her smile rehearsed. She sat on my couch like a guest who knew she had overstayed her welcome. I never meant to cause any trouble, she began. Your husband and I, we just worked very closely. I nodded. Calm. Neutral. She talked too much after that. People always do when they're trying to control a narrative. She told me about late nights. About stress. About emotional connection. About how things crossed a line. What she didn't realize, what fear had erased, was that she was confirming everything. Dates. Places. Timelines. Then she said the one thing she shouldn't have. He told me your marriage was basically over. That's when I looked at her. Really looked. And smiled. Did he? I asked. Because he told me something very different. Her face drained of color. I stood up, walked to the bookshelf, and pulled out a folder. Printed emails. Hotel invoices. Calendar screenshots. I placed them on the table, one by one. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I let reality speak. You weren't confused, I said softly. You were informed. You weren't misled. You were comfortable. She started crying. Apologizing. Begging. That part surprised her, how unmoved I was. Because by then, my anger had already done its work. I suggest, I continued, that you speak to HR before they speak to you again. And that you remember, you didn't take my husband from me. She looked up, hopeful. I finished the sentence. He gave himself away. She left quietly. An hour later, my husband came home. He saw the folder on the table. He didn't ask what it was. He already knew. For the first time in 3 years, he didn't try to lie. He just sat down. And waited for judgment. People think confrontation is explosive. They imagine shouting. Tears. Accusations thrown like weapons. That fantasy exists to comfort the guilty, because chaos feels survivable. What my husband faced was worse. Clarity. He sat at the dining table where we had eaten thousands of meals together. The folder lay between us, closed now. Its contents no longer needed to be proven. I can explain, he said. I raised one hand. Just one. And he stopped. That was new. I don't need an explanation, I said. I need you to listen. You'll get one chance. He nodded, quickly. Eagerly. Like a man who believed cooperation might save him. It wouldn't. You didn't cheat because you were unhappy, I began. You cheated because you were comfortable. Because you thought I would absorb your worst behavior and call it loyalty. He tried to speak. I looked at him. He didn't try again. You built a second life using the first as a foundation, I continued. My labor. My patience. My silence. You didn't just betray me, you used me. His face folded in on itself. Guilt finally finding a shape. I loved you, he whispered. I smiled then. Not kindly. You loved what I made possible. That landed. I slid a single paper across the table. Divorce filing. Prepared. Signed. Dated. I'm not asking for honesty now, I said. You've already told the truth with your choices. He stared at the paper like it might disappear if he waited long enough. What about us? He asked. There is no us, I replied calmly. There's you, facing consequences. And me, walking forward. He asked about forgiveness. That question always comes too late. Forgiveness, I said, is what people seek when they're afraid of accountability. I'm not here to ease your fear. I stood. He stayed seated. That image, that imbalance, felt right. I'll be moving out, I added. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Finances are documented. Evidence is secured. HR will proceed how they see fit. His breath caught. You told them? I met his eyes for the last time. I didn't have to. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Final. That night, he slept alone. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just alone. And for the first time since the truth surfaced, I felt something like relief. Because the story was no longer happening to me. It was unfolding because of me. Consequences rarely arrive with drama. They arrive with emails. Short ones. Carefully worded. Copied to the wrong people. My husband received his first the morning after he moved into the guest room of a colleague's apartment. We need to revisit certain leadership concerns. No accusations. No details. Just a shift in language. Respect replaced by distance. At the office, doors didn't open as easily. Meetings happened without him. Decisions were made in alignment rather than with his input. He had built his authority on confidence. Now confidence had abandoned him. Ria tried to save herself. That was inevitable. She told HR she had been emotionally manipulated. That she was vulnerable. That she believed his marriage was already over. They listened. Then they checked the timeline. Facts don't care about rewritten stories. Emails don't forget dates. Hotel invoices don't care about tears. By the end of the week, she was placed on administrative leave. My husband wasn't fired. Not yet. Punishment is more effective when it's slow. At home, what used to be home, I packed only what belonged to me. I didn't rush. I didn't take things that weren't mine. I took my dignity. He tried one last time. I've lost everything, he said. I corrected him gently. No. You lost control. There's a difference. He asked if we could heal. If time would fix things. If I could ever see him differently. I looked at the man who had once believed I was too foolish to notice betrayal. And realized something beautiful. I felt nothing. No hatred. No longing. No regret. Indifference is the final consequence. And he hadn't earned even my anger anymore. The divorce papers were signed on a Tuesday. Ordinary day. Unremarkable weather. The kind of day people underestimate until it changes everything. He signed first. Slowly. Like the pen weighed more than it should. Like each letter cost him something he hadn't known how to name until it was gone. When it was my turn, I didn't hesitate. That surprised him. He had expected grief. Or nostalgia. Or second thoughts. What he saw instead was certainty. And certainty terrified him more than anger ever could. The settlement was clean. Documented. Unemotional. I didn't take more than I deserved. I took exactly what was mine. That night, I slept in my own apartment. Small. Bright. Quiet. No echoes of old arguments. No ghosts of dinners eaten in silence. No man mistaking my presence for permission. I unpacked slowly. Each object felt lighter without history attached to it. And something unexpected happened. I began to breathe differently. At work, people treated me with a new kind of respect, not sympathy, not curiosity. Recognition. As if they had finally noticed me without him standing in the way. Opportunities followed. Not because I chased them. Because I was no longer shrinking to keep someone else comfortable. Meanwhile, his world continued to narrow. The promotion he had been counting on went in another direction. The reputation he had carefully curated became complicated. People didn't confront him, they simply stopped trusting him. That's the kind of loss that doesn't heal. I heard, months later, that Ria had left the company quietly. No farewell email. No goodbye lunch. Just absence. Fitting. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the city lights come alive, my phone buzzed. A message from him. I hope you're happy. I stared at it for a long time. Then I smiled. Not because of him. Because of me. I typed back only 3 words. I am free. And for the first time in years, those words weren't a performance. They were a fact. Power doesn't arrive the way movies promise. It doesn't kick down doors or demand attention. It settles into you quietly, until one day you realize you no longer need permission to exist. A year passed. Not dramatically. Not painfully. Just steadily. I built routines that belonged only to me. Morning walks. Evenings filled with books instead of explanations. Laughter that wasn't cautious. Silence that felt like rest, not punishment. People sometimes asked about him. I answered kindly. Briefly. He had become a footnote in my life. That, more than anything else, was the ending he never prepared for. I heard things, of course. You always do. That he struggled to regain trust at work. That relationships after me never quite stayed. That he spoke about mistakes without ever naming them. Men like him don't suffer loudly. They suffer privately, when admiration no longer comes automatically. One afternoon, I ran into him by chance. A cafe. Neutral ground. No warning. He looked older. Not in years, but in weight. Like someone carrying a story they didn't know how to rewrite. He smiled when he saw me. I nodded. That was it. No bitterness. No nostalgia. No victory speech. Just 2 people standing on opposite sides of a life that no longer overlapped. As I walked away, I understood something fully for the first time. Revenge isn't about ruining someone. It's about refusing to be ruined. They thought I was foolish because I trusted. They thought I was weak because I stayed quiet. They thought I would break when the truth came out. Instead, I sharpened. I watched. I learned. I chose myself. And that choice, quiet, deliberate, irreversible, changed everything. This is not a story about betrayal. It's a story about a woman who was underestimated. And made that mistake unforgettable.